Welcome to Wellington, the administrative centre of New Zealand and the staging ground for an ongoing battle over the country's economic future. Look at the headlines coming out of the recent Politic Election Summit. The media framed it as a fierce ideological collision. Two finance spokeswomen, National's Nicola Willis and Labour's Barbara Edmonds, who crossed swords over competing visions for the nation. The primary ammunition in this debate came down to strict GDP revenue targets, Labour's aim of 33% versus National's goal to lower it to 30%. Willis even alleged this gap would drain an extra $100 in tax every week from every New Zealand household. It makes for great television. When you pull back that theatrical curtain, the fierce debate disappears. Behind the podium sits a cold, tightly managed consensus, a political machine where both sides ultimately protect the exact same interests. That machine was built 4 decades ago. In 1984, under Finance Minister Roger Douglas, New Zealand adopted a rigid economic architecture. It prioritized market forces and investor confidence above all else. Both major parties govern within the confines of this 40-year-old system, prioritizing investor confidence over the dignity of whānau. To see how this consensus is maintained, we have to stop listening to the campaign speeches and start reading the Electoral Commission's Public Donor Register. Political influence in Aotearoa is highly concentrated, purchased by those with the deepest pockets. This diagram illustrates the flow of capital this election cycle. Billionaire Graham Hart directed $500,000 to National. The Mowbray family spread $450,000 across National and ACT. But Labour's support is identical, concentrated pools of money funding both corners of the ring. In Te Ao Māori, resources are supposed to flow according to manakitanga, the strict cultural obligation to provide for those in need based on kinship. This political funding model completely inverts that principle, replacing responsibility with a checkbox queue. This funding model builds a structural bias into New Zealand politics, where the system responds to wealth first and pushes Maori interests further down the priority list every election cycle. We see the result of that donor influence most clearly in tax policy. Since 2011, consecutive leaders from both sides have systematically killed wealth and capital gains tax recommendations drafted by their own appointed experts. Going into the 2026 election, National promises absolutely no new taxes. Labour, meanwhile, offers a narrow 28% tax that strictly targets investment property. This chart maps out national wealth. Labour's property tax only targets a small slice. Both parties refuse to touch shares, business equity, and inheritance, where billionaires park their fortunes. By protecting these assets, Willis calculates an $8.9 billion tax hole. That deficit is filled by everyone else. The public dispute over minor GDP targets obscures a core agreement. Both major parties maintain a tax code that completely shields the primary asset classes of their largest donors. The consensus translates into direct state support for capital through billions in landlord interest deductibility. The current coalition government is fully restoring these tax breaks, acting as a massive state welfare program for property investors. National's budget also includes an investment boost, an immediate 20% tax deduction for businesses buying new assets. Labour's counteroffer isn't to end the subsidy, but simply to redirect those same funds into a different relief package for small businesses. Both firmly agree that the tax system should subsidize commercial capital. Compare that logic to the concept of whenua. In Maori culture, land is a sacred taonga. It is held in trust for future generations, not treated as a speculative asset class to be leveraged for maximum tax yield. Look at this split screen of our national priorities. We have billions of state dollars subsidizing private rental portfolios and corporate asset purchases, while direct capital grants for papakainga, community housing built on ancestral land, remain chronically underfunded. The disparity is staggering. The government allocated a $2.9 billion tax break for landlords. Meanwhile, a working-class apprentice might receive a one-off $1,000 grant for tools. That is a ratio of nearly 3 million to 1. This imbalance is a deliberate choice. Treating land exclusively as commercial capital rather than kinship and community is the exact same colonial logic that alienated the land originally. Today, it's just processed through inland revenue paperwork. This chart shows the exact human cost of 42 years of economic consensus. In a single year, New Zealand's richest 150 families saw their wealth jump 26.5%, reaching a staggering $129 billion. During that exact same period, working-class wages flatlined. Māori whānau are increasingly forced out of homeownership, absorbing rising rents and burying their children's futures in debt, while billionaire wealth accelerates. We are told the intense arguments over a few GDP percentage points represent democracy at work. That belief is the most effective piece of political manipulation operating today. The illusion that this narrow debate is the full extent of what is possible. True rangatiratanga, absolute sovereignty and self-determination, means refusing to participate in that illusion. It means recognizing that a scripted fight between two managers of the exact same system is not a genuine choice. Stop watching the debate stages and start watching the donor registers. The only way to address this massive disparity is by demanding structural reform, like a genuine, broad-based wealth tax that actually targets concentrated capital. Until we break apart the 4-decade-old economic machinery running quietly in the background, this phony war will continue. Dismantling that architecture is the only way to build a functional, equitable future for Aotearoa.